Good morning, everyone. Anthony Thorpe again. Another insert. It's February 28th, 2023. The second month of the year about to end. The year is moving pretty fast, as you can see. I was hoping I would have gotten a lot of other stuff done, but I have no control there. I want to thank you for tuning in and just sharing with me what I'm going through. And hopefully my experience will be able to assist you and your family, your friends, your associates to make your life a whole lot better, because you're armed with information, critical information that you need to navigate society, the world itself, economics, what's going on, and how you could use that to empower yourself. I've always encouraged persons to become as wealthy as they can. There's no evil in being wealthy. It's what you do with your wealth and how you got there and what you have inside of you. So it's not the money that makes a monster. Okay? Having money and wealth can help you to live the best life you possibly can for you and your family. And you can make the world a better place if you share the knowledge base which you use to get there. So that's all I'm trying to do, as I said, is to get us on a path where I can not only help my partners and myself to achieve the objectives we set out to achieve, but to show you how we can work together to overcome a lot of the ills that we're going through. And togetherness is a powerful word that we have to get accustomed to, because the reality is this: no individual made it on their own. They had to have others working with them, and so they could achieve their objectives and hopefully help the others to benefit. Now, it doesn't work like that all the time, because some people are selfish enough to claim everything for themselves and leave the people behind who assisted in getting them there. So that said, I'm going to be focusing this morning on the current situation as it relates to the ruling that had been made by Justice Tai. As I said in I think it was yesterday or the video before yesterday, was that I don't think a lot of people have been paying attention to the fact that Miss Justice Tai made a ruling in 2017 which pretty much changed the laws or the practices as it relates to real estate development, and not a whole lot of people are paying attention. Maybe they don't know about it, but I try to encourage people to pay attention with this one, because it could affect you directly, especially if you have a mortgage and you purchase property from a real estate developer, especially a big real estate developer doing those massive housing developments across Jamaica. And you need to really check into that developer or those developers and see if they had a real estate dealer's license. And I want to make the point now that don't get confused with dealer's registration. That was the traditional or old way. All a developer had to do if they're going to do more than 5 units is to register with the real estate board as a real estate developer. That changed in 2017 when Justice Tai made a ruling that if a developer did not possess a real estate dealer's license, every agreement they went into was an illegal contract or agreement. And what that means is that whatever agreement those persons purchasing those homes signed and coming out of that developer's activity, who didn't have a dealer's license, and I'm emphasizing again, dealer's license, real estate dealer's license. Don't get confused with registration. So when you call them, don't ask them if they were registered with the real estate board. Ask them if they had a real estate dealer's license. Now that's important, because there is a major difference based on the ruling that Justice Tai made. Now you mightn't think it matters now. Oh, I bought my house several years ago. My friends bought the house several years ago, and the ruling came in 2017. What Justice Tai ruled was that it really doesn't matter. And why I'm saying this is because the matter that came up in front of her when she made that ruling was a joint venture agreement we signed from 2007. And she heard the matter in 2017 and decided that 2007 agreement was invalid, was illegal, and therefore the persons who signed those agreements didn't have to honor the agreement, the joint venture agreement, which of course affected a whole bunch of partners of mine and joint venture partners who had signed up to be a part of that project. And here lies the problem with investing. You typically have control because there are established laws that you would rely on when you're starting out. However, as things emerge sometimes, like for example here where Justice Tai heard a matter, made a ruling that I believe should have been in favor of us because we did everything we were supposed to do. We signed the agreements, we had attorneys, the lady was in favor. In fact, she came to us, and yet she ruled that our agreement was invalid, and anything that came out of it was an illegal agreement and couldn't be honored. Which means now, if you apply that ruling to current situation and past situations, anybody that entered an agreement with a developer that was not legally licensed as a real estate developer, then it meant that your agreement or whosoever bought the property or any agreement that developer went into was illegal, invalid. Now what does that mean? It simply means that nobody has to honor those agreements. And why is that significant? Because if you don't have to honor the agreement, it means that you don't have to pay the developer for the property or pay whosoever paid the developer for the property, which means that would be your mortgage bank or your lender. And there's nothing that you would not be in fault. You'd not be doing anything illegal. Because again, applying the ruling of just the Supreme Court's ruling that changed what we understood to be the law then, meant that it's giving you either reprieve from those responsibilities, or it's going to allow you to save some money still holding on to your property. The reason I'm saying holding on to your property is because the developer actually signed, especially those persons who have had the property for more than 12 years. You fall under the Limitations Act, which is squatters' rights. And once you're under squatters' rights and you've had that property for more than 12 years and nobody gave you notice that you had to vacate the property and you were in possession of that property, then nobody can dispossess you of the property. That's just the law, the Constitution. So if you had that property for 12 years, and of course you even if you were paying a mortgage, because that mortgage agreement between the developer, yourself, and the mortgage bank is essentially illegal, you would have to honor it. And based on my understanding of the matter, and remember, I'm a trained mortgage broker. I've also been involved with financing project and properties. And the fact is, look for every advantage you can in life. And if the court messed up and changed the law and gave you an advantage, don't lose it. What I had recommended was, first of all, what you want to do is draft a letter to your financial institution that's holding the mortgage, and let them know that the Justice Tai ruling in 2017 changed the law and said any agreements you signed coming out of that agreement with the developer was an invalid, illegal agreement, and the bank cannot collect on an illegal agreement. All right, that would be fraud. So she actually changed the rules of the game and made it now fraudulent for those banks to collect those funds from you. And the only play the bank would probably have would be to go after the developer who they paid this money on your behalf, or when they issue the mortgage. It's kind of complicated because again the developer might fight it on the premise that, well, you purchased it, you applied for a mortgage, so it's you that owes this bank the funds, but then they collected the money, which means technically they collected money illegally, and therefore they would have the responsibility of passing back this money to the bank. But let them go deal with it, and let them deal with the Supreme Court and the court on that matter. They'll have to deal with it, and they have the resources to deal with it and resolve. So you'd have to act with stealth though, because if you want to take advantage of this and save yourself a ton of money down the road, once you have had that property for 12 years uninterrupted, you want to slip over to the registrar of titles, and file under squatters' rights for your property. And when you file under squatters' rights for your property, again, nobody can come at you and say, well, they have an interest in the property and they have to enforce it. If they didn't enforce it over that 12-year period, they have no right to it. Now, some judges, and I realize that some judges in the court will say, oh, well, if there's a mortgage, then squatters' rights wouldn't apply. Nothing like that. The Constitution makes no distinction. The fact is, if you control property and nobody has given you notice to vacate that property in 12 years, then the Constitution says you cannot be dispossessed of that property if you're in possession. So it's again for the banks to absorb that loss at that point. In short, it would work like this. If you had a property that a mortgage was on and you didn't pay that mortgage, or you stopped paying that mortgage, and after 6 years the mortgage itself would become invalid. Now, if the bank didn't act on it and took action during that 6-year period where financial agreements, the statute of limitations would rely or affect financial agreements. After 6 years, no payment, they have to write it off. They try to trick people and get away with it, and there are some judges who either don't know the rules of the law or they just bend the rules to suit themselves and these financial institutions. However, as you have been learning, a lot of these judges step out of their box, or the restrictions that's placed on them by the law and the Constitution, and frankly break it, and would have awarded the bank relief when in truth and in fact they shouldn't have. So once you know this, you have this knowledge, then you can approach it from that angle. And if you're too afraid to approach it from that angle, then get an attorney to file the necessary papers. But as I've said to you before, you want to preempt and go over to the titles office and file for your property under squatters' rights. At least get that working. And once those documents come through and you have the title in your name via squatters' rights, and the title would have been in your name already, but you'd just be removing any other liens or persons that claim they have an interest. And in fact, once that agreement is illegal, that mortgage you gave to the bank would also be illegal. So the bank would have been put in a position of having no legal documents to have an interest in your property, because it's not the loan that gives them the interest in your property. That's a note, that's a financial agreement. What gives them interest in your property is the mortgage that you gave to the bank. And a lot of people get confused about this. The bank doesn't give you a mortgage. You gave the bank that agreement, you gave to the bank that gives them legal interest in your property to sell your property or seize it if you don't pay it. It's the mortgage. So you gave them the mortgage. And what I'm saying to you is, if this agreement is illegal because of what Justice Tai ruled, not if, it is illegal because of Justice Tai's ruling, then you don't have to honor that mortgage and the agreement, and the bank cannot legally enforce that agreement because, again, the whole thing is illegal. The bank is thrown in a dilemma because they have to figure out how they're going to deal with this they'll probably have to just write off that money. And don't feel bad. It's business. If a bank, you don't pay a bank, they come in, they seize your property, they sell it, they keep everything. All right. So don't think you're doing anything illicit or illegal or immoral. It's just business and how business works. So again, look at the advantage, because that's going to give you an advantage in life. Now, if you're worried about complications coming up unless government pass new laws and remedies the situation, or the appeals court overturns Justice Tai's ruling, then what will happen is, well, what you should do, as I said to you before, make sure you put your monthly payments in an escrow account that's accruing interest. And once you put it in there, that's accruing interest, at least you know that money is building up. So if it does come back on the bank and the decision of Justice Tai is overturned, at least you have the money now to catch up with your bank. And again, it wouldn't be your fault. So the bank would have to make compromise and not charge you any late fees and all of that, because remember, you sent the bank a notice telling them A, the mortgage is invalid, B, they'd have to go after the developer for the money they paid over, and C, all of that is happening because the Justice Tai's ruling. Let them go to the emotions of getting an attorney and going in there and dealing with it. So again, please make sure you're paying attention to this. It's extremely important. Now, why it's also significant and why you want to make sure that you recoup as much money as you can and save it, it's because once this hits the fan, as they say, and people really find out what's going on with it, it's literally going to cause the banking or mortgage industry to collapse. Why is that significant to Jamaica and Jamaicans? Because if the mortgage banks or lending institutions lose billions of dollars and collapse, it means money that you have in your bank or bank account would also be affected. And people who have Jamaican dollars, holding Jamaican dollars, would also be affected negatively, because that's going to affect, again, the value of that dollar. Which means if the dollar falls, you have lost spending power, you've lost your money. I'd encourage you at this point, if you have money in the bank and have more than 1.2 million in the bank, Jamaican, and you have significantly more money or even more than that, the difference you have, pull it. And if you could use it to purchase US dollars and hold the US dollars, then do that. Because once those banks collapse, you're going to lose your money, just like SSL. When SSL was shut down the other day, you can figure everybody that has money in there is going to lose money. All this talk about people getting back money and all of that, yeah, some people might get back that $1.2 million Jamaican, even if they have $60 million in there. So you don't want to be caught with your pants down in that position. You want to make sure that you take advantage of every possibility. Not take advantage, but look at all the possibilities and structure your business and your daily activity around what decisions do I make? What decisions do I make to make sure that I don't lose my money? So again, I would I find alternative places to stash your cash, but go in there, convert it to US dollars and put it someplace safe. And if you need to buy a safe and dig a hole under the tiles in your house, hide it, don't tell anybody where it is. Alternatively, if you have a US account or in the US, or maybe you had money saved and you don't want the US government to know about it, try and open an account maybe in Cayman or St. Lucia or one of those Seychelles, one of those offshore islands that allow you to set up accounts where your money would be safe. And again, not telling you to go break any laws. Hopefully you have money that you earned outside of the US. It's not money that you want in the US or deposit in the US. Maybe you're not even a citizen of the US. But what that does is now you have to find international banks to put your money. So again, if you sign a mortgage over to a bank and you're paying that mortgage, if the agreement is illegal, you don't have to pay. You'd be silly to pay it, simply put. In the financial world, you take all the advantage you can to build your economy, but protect yourself. Take all the measures to ensure that it doesn't backfire if it doesn't come back. As I said, we've been waiting, and we took this length of time to expose the whole ruling by Justice Sai, because somehow I suspect, because of what's going on in the courts and because I'm fighting those issues, because, as I said, with the lady with the cows, where I think the judge took advantage of her in hurting her through using me as, because of me, then hurting her and causing her financial and economic damages and stressing her out, therefore affecting her health. So don't fall in the same category because of this, if indeed they do rule against me. And I say I've been sitting on this and waiting for some 4 years now, and it should have been handed down in 58 days. And each time I contact them and ask them what's happening, they'd say, oh, they're coming with it. The dilemma for them is, A, they want to get me, but at the same time they don't want to collapse the banking industry, because they realize that Justice Style ruling was in fact against the established norms and the law. But since she made it, it became law. That's how it works. So again, check your banking situation and your mortgage situation, your housing situation. If you bought property for investment or for residence, then you need to check into this. Now, a lot of persons abroad are living internationally out of Jamaica. They bought some of those homes for investments. Not a bad idea. It probably went up in value, or should be going up in value, but as you would recognize by now and from what we've been discussing, when you're paying a mortgage, you're really not making major returns unless you're using that property for let's say Airbnb rental purposes. And Airbnb and those short-term rental to tourists are better than renting it to local persons. Why? Because you're making a ton of money more without the headache. Excuse me. So if you're renting it through an Airbnb type arrangement, then you're making a lot of money. You could probably pay off that loan in the short run. If not, and you're just paying the mortgage and have it rented on a regular month-to-month basis, then you're probably not making a ton of money or making any money in the long run. You'll make it in the short run. You'll make it. Sorry, let me just get some water. I'm having a dry. Okay. Something is going on here. I don't know what it is, but quite a few people have had it, and there's this tingling dryness in your throat. Anyway, if you bought the house for investment and you're renting it through Airbnb, you'll be making some good returns on your investment, I hope. Because some people bought it and they put a ton of money in fixing up the house, rehabbing the house, so it might take you a longer time to recoup your funds. But have it rented so you have that income coming in. If you paid off the note already, it means that you probably wouldn't get into this whole dilemma of the illegality of the actions of the developer because of Justice Stai's ruling. So you wouldn't have any advantage whatsoever. The persons who are still paying that mortgage or that note would have the advantage of putting their money aside and not just put it aside, acquire US or international currency. And international currency is not just US dollar, it's Canadian, it's Cayman, it's UK, whichever you prefer. I would go along that route. And the thing about it is, I'm thinking, and this is just speculative, the US tracks its money. And if you have money that I guess you don't really want persons to know that you're dealing in US dollars so that they can mess with your accounts, because if you're not dealing in US dollars, then the US can't come after you in terms of money laundering US dollars. They might be able to come after you for money laundering if you're involved in anything illegal, or you're living in the US, or terrorism, which I doubt you are. There's no intelligent person gets involved there. It's a dead end. It's a no-win situation. But that said, I would then, if that's my strategy of getting out of breaking any laws in the US, if I have low money here and I have investment property making that money, I would set up a Canadian or a UK account in Cayman or some other island that has offshore banking facilities and put your money there. Because if this thing goes down and they rule against us and the banks collapse here, it means you don't want to have your money in that bank or that institution and lose it because of negligence on your part, not acting. Now, people who are playing this whole investment game and money game and trying to make as much money, pay attention to every indicator. So if you have money in an island and that island is becoming, getting to a point where their values are riskier, their banks are looking like they'll collapse, then you want to move your money. That's what the rich and powerful do. That's how they keep their money. I remember in Greece years ago, the banking sector literally collapsed and people lost tons of money. People lost money in France a couple of years ago because the dollar fell so much, and it's the same thing all over. Mexico's values are going up now because remember how their dollar is still low compared to the US, but or the peso. However, because their economy is so strong now, are getting stronger, because Mexico is one of the strongest economies in the region. Their money isn't as shaky as one might think, and you might want to look at again alternate investment options through acquiring international currency that's not necessarily US, and so you protect yourself or minimize the possibilities of you being charged with anything illegal in terms of tax evasion and all of that, because of US law. And tax evasion is, I would encourage you, if you're making money abroad and you live in the US and you intend to live in the US, don't hide your money. Pay your taxes. Let them know that you earn the money this way, you pay your taxes this way, and therefore there are no questions or they can come at you, because if they find an excuse to come at you, they're coming hard. And why I said do that, because I don't believe in jeopardizing your situation in any regard. So if you live in the US and you're a US person and you have money abroad and you're earning money from investments you made, let's say in homes in the Caribbean, that's not money you need to hide. As a matter of fact, it could be a tax advantage. Not giving you tax advice, please note. I know for example, because I'm a real estate investor, if I invest in property anywhere in the world and I'm flying to that particular place to go look about the property, inspect it, all my airfare and expenses that I spent going there to deal with it would be a tax write-off. So it would make sense to hide stuff like that, because you're writing off the taxes. It's an investment property. The US does not restrict you from investing in other countries or elsewhere. So you're taking the tax write-off for your travel, all of that, to go invest, check out your property. You're also getting the write-off from depreciation, because remember, when you have an asset like real estate or any other capital, the law allows you to take a depreciation on that asset annually for your taxes. So in fact, it might or should work to somebody's advantage that has investments abroad. So look into that, talk to your tax person, find a tax person that does know your business and talk to them about it and see what kind of advantage. Plus you can go on the IRS's website, I guess, and look up deductibilities on investment property. And remember, you're not restricted to the borders of the US. So don't undermine yourself long-term, short-term by trying to get around paying those taxes. You might end up losing everything if you don't. And if you plan on leaving it for your relatives, your family, all of that, and when it comes up to your estate, that pops up, and you have property abroad and it pops up, and all of that now is going to complicate your estate. Because when you live in the US or you're a US person, your estate is not only what you have in the US, it's what you have elsewhere. And it has to be part of the probate process if you're doing it legally. Now again, there are measures you can take, for example, of setting up trusts abroad, companies abroad, registered in other areas that act as a tax shelter, like what Mr. Prime Minister did. And those people at SSL, they set up accounts in St. Lucia under a company name that's registered there. You can set up trusts. That would be a different situation, I believe, entirely, because a company is a business and an individual on its own under the tax laws. So you wouldn't be liable for all of that. So maybe you want to look at setting up companies internationally in areas where it acts as a tax shelter, and therefore income going into it is going into your corporate name, and in those areas typically you have good tax laws. So I would look at those, but you want to take those measures now and don't wait until you're either too old to deal with it, or you have so much pressure that you forget about it, and then forgetting, then it creeps up on you and then you're in trouble. Try to minimize that, because what you're working towards is getting your life to a point where you can have that residual income down the road, or you have access to money that you can tap into to enjoy your life or set up stuff for your children or your family. But don't waste the time of sitting and watching or waiting for stuff to happen. You have control, and it's that control that gets you that advantage in life. As I said before, not everything is illegal if you bank outside of the US. So you have to check US laws, check laws elsewhere, check laws in Jamaica, and you want to take care of that in terms of all the advantages you can. So if you're banking in St. Lucia or one of those places, and you open a company there, you'd want to purchase all your assets and property in that company's name. And for God's sake, whatever taxes you need to pay in that company's name, you pay it. The US government would not have any control over those assets if it's registered in another country, in a company that's registered in that country, and the resources are there in terms of your asset and your capital. And of course then you can go spend your money that way, because again, you can spend that money depending on the arrangement you make. Set up a trust, and so that you become the beneficiary of the trust or the managing trustee for your own trust. I said, I don't know what the trusts are over there, but you have all kind of trusts, and I think you can pretty much structure the trust to suit yourself. And what I do is make sure I manage the trust, but you are, if at all, a stakeholder in the trust, meaning you're a beneficiary. Make sure you're a beneficiary with a small interest, but with controlling interest over the trust. In other words, let's say for the company, you can write your bylaws for the company or structure your corporate documents so that you remain totally 100% in control of that company without you actually showing any ownership in the company. However, if you want to protect yourself to 1,000 degree, I would think, give yourself an equity position in the company so small it's ridiculous. That way, whatever you're paying on your taxes from earnings from that, if you're a person living in the UK, US, and you file your taxes there, then it's not going to be the bulk of the profits that that company makes. Just a suggestion. As I say, I'm not giving you tax advice. Talk to your tax person, work it out. You can keep your money if you plan your business right. So that's all said, because we're going back to the Jamaica situation and this ruling by Justice Ty. You have advantages, take them advantages and work them. Don't sit there and think anything you're doing would be illegal. They made the law, they passed it, and if they made the ruling because they were trying to get back at me for fighting them on issues, then take advantage of it. It means they made the mistake of trying to be victimizing me or anybody else, and so they created an advantage for you. And again, if the appeals court overturns it, then depending on what you do now, you could still have the advantage. I said, if you have the property for more than 12 years, you want to notify your bank that you stop paying this mortgage because of the illegal contract, or it's an illegal agreement. You don't have to honor it. Then before you do that, you file for squatters' rights on your property. And when it pops up on the real estate, the registrar title will say, oh, but you have a mortgage down there. You can't and you didn't pay the mortgage, then they can't. Let the registrar title know the limitations on financial contracts is 12 years. You've been in control of your property for more than 12 years, and the financial agreement is illegal by virtue of Justice Ty's ruling. In fact, clip the ruling to whatever letters you're sending and let the registrar title go check it out as well. But this is buying you time to take advantage of the market, the situation, controlling your dollars, put that money into an account outside of this country, so that when the banking industry does collapse as a result of the ruling of Justice Ty and people start taking advantage of the illegal contracts that they signed or entered and stop honoring those contracts, then you won't get burnt. And pass it on to friends. Protect yourself. You don't want to fall into the trap of making sure only the rich and powerful move their money, and then you are stuck. If you don't have a bank that you could do banking with abroad, and you don't have a big savings, then take that money and, as I said, purchase a safe, dig a hole someplace in your house and hide it. Make sure nobody else knows, or it's only the key people you know, that you have a safe with money in there. All right. Thank you. Have a great one. Looking forward to doing another video on information that's going to be beneficial. In the interim, please like the video, subscribe, and share it. And my mission is to come out of this situation with what's going on with the corruption in the courts and the lack of activity on the police to do their jobs. That's keeping my partners and joint venture partners and this country's economy in shambles, and preventing major development from happening, and then transitioning all my activity towards accomplishing those developments, allowing persons like yourself who are listening and want to take advantage of the economic activities that we're creating. Because, as I said, we did create real estate activity that persons could acquire and make a lot of money off, because our mission was to make sure the Jamaican people and the economy benefits from these developments, and the money just doesn't get taken out by international investment firms. All right, so thank you. Have a good one. Again, love yourself, love your family, and always do the right thing. Thank you. Have a good one.